China's Deputy Ambassador to Australia has accused Scott Morrison of overreacting to an inflammatory tweet by a Beijing official. Wang Jingying spoke to the ABC after attending a foreign policy speech by Maurice Payne in Canberra. Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Jedgetts has more.
It has been an extraordinary week, and of course it began with this now infamous tweet that was put out by essentially a spokesman for the Foreign Affairs Ministry in Beijing, which depicted, of course, an Australian soldier. It was an artwork essentially holding a knife to the throat of an Afghan child, a reference to the Brereton report and Australian war crimes in Afghanistan. That drew a furious response from across the political spectrum, particularly from the Prime Minister, who demanded an apology. But far from apologising, China has essentially spent most of the week dialling up the rhetoric. We've had repeated attacks from the Chinese embassy as well as Chinese state media, all accusing Scott Morrison and the Australian government of trying to divert attention away from what happened in Afghanistan and blaming China for drawing attention to it. Now, today, Wang Jingying, the Deputy Ambassador, attended a speech that was being given in front of the entire diplomatic corps by the Foreign Minister, Maurice Payne. I spoke to him briefly on the way out, and he suggested that the Prime Minister had overreacted and, as a result, had actually drawn more attention to Australian actions in Afghanistan as a result, implying, I guess, that it was a bit of a blunder. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
It's unfortunate that this issue evolved in such a way that have gone astray. And now there's a much larger visibility of the Brereton report in China. More people are attentive to what has happened in Afghanistan. And also people wondered why a national leader would have such a strong opinion to an artwork done by a normal young artist in China.
Stephen, did the Deputy Ambassador address the diplomatic freeze which China has imposed on Australia?
Yes, of course, it's been months and months now since any Australian minister has managed to get their counterpart on the phone. There's been no meetings between top ministers in China and Australia. What we've seen essentially is a diplomatic freeze. Now, I put that to the Deputy Ambassador and he gave an answer that I'm afraid stretches credulity. He simply said that it takes time to organise meetings like this. To be fair, the Ambassador probably felt like he had to say that, but no one can believe it for a second. It's obvious that there is a diplomatic freeze, and the Deputy Ambassador gestured towards that in his brief interview when he also referred to the need for concrete actions from Australia. So the message really, despite the denial, is very clear. China still wants to see Australia give ground on some core issues before it's willing to end the diplomatic freeze. And it's that attitude that has really infuriated Canberra and has prompted fresh thinking and introspection here about exactly how we deal with a Chinese government that seems so intent on using its enormous economic leverage to force changes in Australian policy.
And how about the speech by Maurice Payne? What did the Foreign Minister say?
Look, given the extraordinary and torrid events of the week, it was a pretty sunny speech, you'd have to say. Maurice Payne clearly wanted to end the year on a bit of a high, at least in terms of tone. She wanted to stress to all the ambassadors the importance of multilateralism. She ran through a very familiar and in many cases very worthy checklist of everything that Australia's done over the past year in terms of stepping up its engagement in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. But there was barely any mention of China and no direct mention to the extraordinary diplomatic conflagration that we've seen this week. So the Foreign Minister seemed intent on avoiding the elephant in the room. That isn't necessarily a criticism. She may have felt there are good reasons to do so. But for those who turned up expecting a major speech, they received a pretty familiar list of what we already knew.